Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We just want to welcome you all to this last day of this high-level dialogues. This is a panel that we called AI, its use on social security systems. It is an initiative by Subregion 4 of our CISS for North America and the Caribbean. I would like to start just by reminding you that this panel is being streamed both by, well, not only in the website of the CISS, but also on the different websites and platforms that we have, all in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, for you to be able to stream it in whichever language you prefer. So this proposal comes from this knowledge that we have with the need of just really adjusting to the different challenges and opportunities that contemporary news
Recording in
technology
progress.
is just providing to us. Today, we're going to be addressing how AI has the potential of just transforming social security systems in our region to improve our efficiency and to promote a broader inclusion. We have distinguished panel members. They're going to be sharing their own insight in this key topic. I really appreciate that you took our invitation to join us today. And let's hope that this is just the beginning of a great collaboration with all of you for us to keep on just working in the use of AI in the social security systems. So to start this panel, I would just like to introduce Ernesto Robinson. He is a Superior Officer of Social Security of the Development on Social Security Division of the International Association of Social Security. He is going to be talking about the use of AI to the service of Social Security. He is a high officer of the IAS. He is responsible for just managing the technical commissions and organization planning, management, innovation on information communication technology. He is responsible for creating and disseminating contents on topics that are a priority, such as the management of webinars and workshops and just doing reports and specialized and all types of technical articles. He is also working in the different government regulating agencies, such as those that are responsible for strengthening all of this system. So in 2003 and 2016, he was part of the Mexican government in CONSAR. He was in charge of different positions, such as the general director of regulation and financial inclusion. He was also responsible for the design of regulations to improve pensions. He promoted programs to raise awareness on the importance of savings for retirement and social protection. He also worked on the CONSAR and the pension system for public officials. In 2007, he was oversighting the incorporation of digital solutions, including a biometric interoperative system. He was also the manager of different pension systems, and he enabled discussions focused on results. So thank you so much, Ernesto, for having accepted our invitation. And now the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Oscar, for introducing me. I would like to thank the CISS for having me here today and to take part in this and to just give you this brief presentation on the progress and the work that we have conducted. Now it's time to share my screen. I hope you can see it now. Yes, there it is. Perfect, thank you. So, this is a topic that addresses the use of AI for social security purposes. And this is something that we have been addressing for a couple of years now. Obviously, in the past years, we have seen a boom in this regard, and this also led to just getting more interest from the technical commission, and we as the University of the UN University, as you may know, it is one of the co-authors, as well as Roxana Casu, on the report that we launched a couple of months ago, and which I'm going to be addressing here today, and I'm going to give you a brief presentation about it. So, like you mentioned at the very beginning, when you were just giving this introduction, precisely AI is an extra tool for that reason. I would like to just really take us back in time before we start just getting into the topic. Let's talk about, let's say, some general ideas on digital transformation, and then we can get into the particular details of this AI. It is no secret that digital transformation has been a process where we have really have established this vision of social security systems as it has changed the formula to which we were used to just addressing the social security systems. And well, we know that we have reached more people, we have been more efficient, and we know that people have managed to use technology to even add more value. So nowadays, instead of just focusing on efficiency and streamlining, we have mainly focused on generating value, creating value. And social security is now data centered social security, I would call it. It is a term that is becoming more and more prevalent every day. We know that all organizations are mainly focusing on that so that we can really streamline the process and our traditional process to get to this digital transformation in general from the different social security organizations. So, what does digital transformation mean? Evidently, it is much more than technology. This is one of the main and key points that I wanted to convey in this slide. And more than changing the organizational culture and just changing, restating the different services and just seeing what has been the progress of service, how we have been giving value, the patients and clients' experience, and how we have been approaching all of this in order to get to more transparency and in turn for us to be able to streamline these processes and to also create more synergies. It is important to note here that it is just a path. It is not our target destination. It is not something that, okay, you can just achieve a purpose with it. No, it is really clear to us right now that if we see a graph like the one that I'm showing here, we could see here the different innovation that has taken place in not only technology since the 40s, where we started to have computing systems and then we migrated to mainframes. And then in the 90s, we started with a wave of connectivity and then interconnection of different systems for us to be able to improve this content. And in, let's say, late 2000s, we started creating a wave of much more connectivity through mobile devices. So it is a tool that allows having much better access. And what's important about this is that all of these waves seem to get closer and closer to one another, and they're just closing all of these time gaps in between each one. So in this other graph to the right, you see something quite similar to what I have just explained. We have seen some changes in generations. Some of us may believe that we're just starting with this new wave of innovation where we still hear a lot about, let's say, AI, cloud computing, and other different types of innovation that just start to emerge. Why am I talking about this? Because we know that digital transformation, we must bear in mind that it is, well, mainly related to social security. We need to focus on clients and our patients, not only thinking about efficiency. That's, of course, something that is a given. It is already something that we must do as organizations whenever we're talking about digital transformation, but also we need to really seek and push this digital transformation so that it is customer centric or client centric. And we know that human resources and staff need to be at the service and hand in hand with this digital transformation, because we know that we will always see this type of resistance to change. And it is really important to really start just including this change strategy as part of this digital transformation. And we know that we are going to have this hand in hand with efficiency, like we mentioned. Then we can just manage and catalyze the different effects and impact we can have on the society and the different stakeholders, just by always creating this environment of sustainability. So, how does AI come into play in this framework of digital transformation? If we think that this is a tool, well, how this tool is going to create value specifically for social security, what is it going to bring to the table? And now I'm going to talk about the different examples that we have been just really noticing, and then we're going to get into the details of them. And then we're going to see what's the result of a study and a report that we released not a long time ago. So, one of the main advantages where AI has been helpful, well, is because we provide larger and better coverage to people. Let's say we need to identify and pinpoint what is the vulnerable target population that require this type of aid. We've seen this in Canada, in the Social Security Agency in Canada. They use this type of AI tool so that they could just pinpoint through AI with non-structured tools. And I know that Saber is going to be addressing this later on. So again, how can we identify and pinpoint those persons who really require this type of aid? Let's say in COVID, we know that it was very difficult to really tell who was the vulnerable population. So now we're using AI for us to be able to manage that. Now we also need a more, let's say, tailor-made or more customized assistance that we can provide to our affiliates. And we also need to really learn how to give these explanations. Sometimes it is quite a complex language to convey. In many AI tools, a large part of them have been put or made available through chatbots or natural language chatbots, and we have used multilingual tools as well, specifically for Social Security. There's an example in Morocco where they're using both Arabic and French, both languages, and we know that they are absolutely different. We know that there's different complexity. They're not easy to address, but with AI, this is we're getting closer and closer. We are more streamlined and we have a higher level of efficiency and automation. We're going to address this later on. And we know that AI is an expert when it comes to finding non-apparent behavioral patterns. In the past, we used to have ideas through regressions where we could do some mathematical analysis. And in these cases, well, we can start just really finding these cases where we see that, well, they're not conforming, and we see this in, let's say, evasion and fraud. And lastly, to again pinpoint and assess risks, this is going to allow us to tell or to find what are the challenges in a given population. Let's say in the case of occupational risks in Germany, this AI has been used to just pinpoint patterns, the types of work, what happens at each job position, so that we can really tell where to go, how to really send people to do more inspection, where do we require more, let's say, strength when it comes to really making sure that security standards are met. And another important part is that whenever we talk about AI is based on what? We know that AI is based on algorithms, on data, information, and I'm positive that later on we're all going to address this, but it is crucial for us to have just truthful information, and the results and outcome from any AI tool are based on data accuracy, on data quality, and whichever information is being fed, or these algorithms themselves. Each and every one of these algorithms is going to have its own bias, its own complexity. We're going to get into that with a little bit more detail. But also, we cannot overlook the fact that we're all human beings in the end. We are persons. We are, whether developers or experts, and we are the ones who are developing this type of tool. So we do have a whole set of factors that are going to determine the reliability of this AI. And if these are not properly developed, let's say if we use a set of biased data, could maybe somehow amplify this existing biases in a given set of information. So talking about biases is really important, and it has been one of the main concerns that we have found. We also need to bear in mind that there are different types of algorithms, and each and every one of them has its own biases and efficiency And I am positive
más
that
adelante en la parte
we are
final.
later going to
Y es
address
importante,
this
el último,
technical
antes
part.
de
Now,
entrar un poquito al
before
tema
we
de los
get
ejemplos,
into
es
one of
que no
these
todos los
main
sesgos son
examples that
malos.
I
Por
wanted to
ejemplo, si
show you,
queremos
is that not all
evitar
algorithms or
que
biases
personas
are,
de determinado
well,
nivel de
evil or
ingreso
wrong.
tengan
If we
ciertos
think that, let's
beneficios
say, if we need to determine, let's
simplemente
say,
por
that
trato social en
a
el
sector of
sistema de
persons from a
seguridad social,
given
dice, bueno, estas
range of
personas no
income
requieren
are
este tipo
to
de
receive
apoyos,
this
no
aid or
debería de haber.
assistance, and then the
Probablemente
other
sea
type of
bueno tener
income
un sesgo de
do
decir,
not need to really get this assistance. Then that
justamente
bias in that
prevenir que
case
el
is going to
algoritmo
be
identifique
useful
contenidos
because we're going
diarios a
to
una
prevent an
persona
algorithm
que
to
no lo
pinpoint
requiere. O bien,
beneficiaries that are not part of this income
habrá
segment.
N número de
So
otros casos al respecto.
we
Por
do
ejemplo,
have many more examples
y como decía
like this
hace
one.
unos minutos,
So,
la
like I
implementación, la
just mentioned,
participación tanto de
this
expertos
deployment,
de
when it
tecnología, de
comes to this deployment, we need
inteligencia,
the
como expertos en
participation
la
of
materia,
AI
sumamente importantes en
experts,
los círculos sociales,
technology
etcétera, etcétera.
experts. We know that they
¿Cuáles
are
son algunos de
crucial
los
for us to be able
ejemplos
to develop
nocivos
all of this.
a
Now,
la
what
tarea?
are
Y voy a empezar
some
con los
examples?
ejemplos
Well,
antes
let's start with
de entrar al
this
reporte,
examples before we
porque
get
realmente
into the
ilustran
report,
un poco qué tipo
because
de
they're
herramientas
just
se
going
han
to help us
usado a
really
nivel
illustrate
mundial.
what are the
Hemos
types
visto un
of tools
auge,
that have been
obviamente esto es
used
más
worldwide.
reciente, pero
We
es
have
algo que
seen
se ha
a
usado
boom more
en todos los
recently, of course,
continentes
but this is
prácticamente.
something that has been used
Este ejemplo de
across
arriba
all continents.
de la
This
pantalla
is an example that
muestra
we see at the
cómo
top of the
en Arabia
screen.
Saudita
There's
usaron,
how in Saudi
adaptaron
Arabia
un
they have
ChatGPT,
used and adapted some sort of
una
a
herramienta ChatGPT
ChatGPT. This is
para
a
utilizar a
ChatGPT
esa
tool.
humanoide, ¿no?
This is a
Esa
humanoid, right?
persona como
A
una
person
parte de
behind
un
it, and
kiosco para
they're just
dar
including it
atención
as part of a
personalizada
kiosk to
a las
provide
personas. Cuando
tailor-made
persona
service
llega
to people. Let's say when someone gets to
a una sucursal o a
a branch or
a una agencia de seguridad social a
or a
solicitar
social
un beneficio.
security
En
agency to
el caso
request
de
any sort of
abajo,
benefit.
por
Now,
ejemplo,
if you
vemos
see the
inteligencia
bottom part of your
artificial siendo
screen, you
usada
see
más en el
AI
reconocimiento de
being used
imágenes,
specifically
en un
for
sistema
image
de detección
recognition.
de
This
de
is a
retinopatía,
retinal
inclusive
uh,
mismo México, en
retinal
donde
diseases, let's
justamente
say,
se
uh,
identifican
for
a
us to be able
través
to
de
identify them.
herramientas de
So
inteligencia
we
artificial
know that
personas
we
que
have
tengan este
this
tipo
AI tools for
de
persons who
padecimientos,
have these
en
types
donde
of
normalmente el ojo humano
diseases, and we
probablemente
know that the
no lo
human
podría
eye
hacer tan
more
fácil. Y esto
likely
es algo que
could
los
not
sistemas de
really
inteligencia
just
artificial
pinpoint or
permiten, nos
identify them.
ayudan.
So with
Podemos
this
hacerlo en Chile, por
AI models,
ejemplo,
we could do
se ha
this. Let's say,
usado
like in
para
Chile, we
detección
have used it to
de
start
enfermedades
just really
pulmonares,
finding
para
pulmonary
asegurarse que las
diseases,
personas
just to
estén en
make
condiciones de
sure that
poder seguir
persons
trabajando,
are
por ejemplo, en
under
el caso de Chile,
conditions to continue working, like in the case of Chile.
en otros casos, un
And now
poco
in other
más de
cases,
análisis de
if we start
información,
getting into
en
this
Estonia
data
se utilizó,
analysis,
por
let's say
ejemplo,
in
inteligencia
Estonia,
artificial
we
para
use AI
identificar de
to
las personas que están
find out
desempleadas
of a group
qué
of
tipo de
unemployed
capacitación
people,
se
then
requeriría
what is the
darle a
type of
una
training that
persona
they would
con
require
cierto perfil.
if they were
Con
to
una
meet a
herramienta de
certain
inteligencia
profile.
artificial
And by
se
using
pudo
an
ayudar
AI
a
tool, we
que el
managed to
asesor que está dando
help
estos
a
consejos a las personas
consultant
pueda
providing this type of
identificar,
piece of
bueno, qué
advices
es
or
lo que
consultancy to people for that person
qué
to
es
be
lo
able
que
to
la persona necesitaría capacitarse.
just
Si,
make some
si es
recommendations, a
mejor dar
training
una
for a given
capacitación de
person.
tipo
Let's say
A o de
maybe
tipo
a
B,
type
el
A or
asesor
type B
utiliza este tipo de
training for a
herramientas
given
para
person, and
asesorarse.
then
En Australia
we would have
se
the
utilizó
consultant
como una herramienta
just
para
really
rápidamente
getting this assistance.
identificar
In
un
Australia, let's
estilo de
say we used a
herramientas,
tool to just quickly
tipo de
identify some
enfermedades,
types of
sepsis,
tools
que
or
es
some
una
type of
enfermedad
diseases
que es
like
fácilmente confundible
sepsis, for
con
instance. It
otros
is a
síntomas.
disease that
Entonces
may
la
be just
herramienta a través
easily
de un cuestionario
mixed
muy
up with
rápido
other types of
detectaba
symptoms.
a
So it is
través de un
very
algoritmo
just
si una persona
quickly
tendría que
identifiable with
tener
this
mayor
algorithm for us to
privilegio
be able to
o
tell
no.
whether a person should have more privileges or not.
Repetimos tipo de experiencias.
So we
Hicimos
use this type
un
of
acopio de más de
experiences,
30
and
soluciones de distintas
we have
seguridad
a
social
review of over
encima del
30
reporte
solutions of
que se
AI, different
conjunto
AI
y
solutions. This is part of our joint
muestra
report,
definitivamente una
and
diversidad. Y
we
si bien
show
al
this
principio
diversity. At
corriente
first, we
y la
know that
tendencia era
the
utilizar
trend
herramientas de
was
inteligencia
to
artificial
use
principalmente
AI
para
tools
hacer
mainly
chatbots, ahora,
for
hoy en
chatbot
día, el
development.
aprendizaje
Now,
automático se está haciendo
with
mucho más
this machine
esa
learning
gráfica de la izquierda
that is becoming
muestra
more and more
la evolución en
pervasive.
el tiempo
If you take a
en las
look at
distintas
this
ramas de
graph,
seguridad
we can see
social
the
y
different
en la
branches of
gráfica de la
social
derecha
security
el
to
tipo
your
de
left-hand side, and now to
aplicaciones que
your
necesita.
right-hand side, you see
Pasando
the
desde la
types of
atención
applications
preferente, vemos
for
el
which it
segundo
is being
color
used.
azul más
And then we
clarito,
take a look at
chatbots
the lighter
inteligentes
blue,
teniendo una
smart and
preponderancia y
intelligent
ahora se ven
chatbots
más
are
herramientas de
more
aprendizaje
prevalent, and now
automático
we
mucho
start to
más
see more machine
sofisticadas
learning
que
tools that are
ayudan
much
a
more
las instituciones de
sophisticated
seguridad
because they're
social
now
a
helping
lograr
out social security
comercializar
institutions
y
to
materializar estos beneficios.
really be able
Ahora, con
to
esto,
get all of these
lo que nos
benefits.
dimos a la
Now, with
tarea es hacer
this,
una
what we
especie de
started to
topología,
do
un mapa
was some sort of
general
topology,
de
a map,
qué es lo que,
a general
en dónde
map
se
for
utiliza
us
la
to
inteligencia
map
artificial y
precisely
bajo
where
qué
is AI
circunstancias, en
being
dónde
used, under
apoya
what
la
what
inteligencia artificial
circumstances,
en la
where is
seguridad social.
AI
Hicimos
being used as
este
support
tipo de
for social
topología
security. So we
donde hay
developed this
una serie
topology
de
again,
aplicaciones.
where we have a
Empezamos
series of
del lado izquierdo
applications.
por las
If
prestaciones de
you take a
servicio,
look at the
que ahí es donde
left-hand
están
side, we
las
started with
más,
service
perdón que esté
provision.
tan chiquito,
That
no veo
sorry, my apologies that this is
no,
such a
bueno,
very
en la
tiny
parte positiva lo pueden ver
diagram.
por vía
Well, in the
del
report, you're going to be
reporte.
able to see it with more
Del lado
detail. My
izquierdo está
apologies. I'm going to share the
los
link.
chatbots
So to
inteligentes,
your
los
left-hand side, you
asistentes
have
conversacionales,
intelligent chatbots,
pasamos
conversational
después
agents,
con
and then we have
automatización y gestión de casos.
automation
Ese es el
and case
caso, por ejemplo,
management.
de clínicas, ¿no?
This is, let's say, for
O más bien
clinics
reclamos médicos, en
or
donde
medical
las
claims,
instituciones de seguridad social que se
where we
dedican a
see
atender los
that
temas de
the
salud,
social security institutions that
justamente
are
para
providing
administrar
healthcare,
el tema de
well,
casos
they're
y
going to just
liberar
manage
un
their
recurso,
cases, and they're going
un
to
recurso humano
release
sumamente
human
especializado, como
resources,
por
let's
ejemplo
say, that
doctores,
are
a revisar
highly
casos
specialized
especializados,
doctors for them to
logra
review all of these
utilizar
specialized
una
cases.
herramienta de inteligencia
And then they
artificial para
manage to
justamente
use these AI
priorizar los
tools
que
so that they
realmente
can
sí deben de tratar
prioritize
a través de
those that are
algoritmos
really
que son
useful
probabilísticos en naturaleza,
to
que es
really
algo
get
que
into
siempre
these
menciono.
probabilistic algorithms
En
that
la
are
seguridad social
really
como
probabilistic in
prospectiva
nature. So
o
now we know
proactiva
that it is
hay
important to
este
talk about
tipo de
prospective or
herramientas. No
proactive
voy a entrar al
social
detalle,
security. We have
pero
different
hay
details and
desde
different
análisis
tools.
más
So
prospectivo
we
hacia
have
adelante,
more
qué es lo que
perspective
sucedería bajo
analysis. Let's say
ciertas
we start just taking
circunstancias,
a look at
pero
what
también
could
hay
happen under certain
utilizando
circumstances. But we
otro caso en
also
Estonia,
have,
por ejemplo, se
well, let's say
utilizan
another case in
unas
Estonia,
herramientas
where
que
we have some
le
tools
avisan a los clientes,
where
a
we
los
can
miembros,
see that
oye,
clients or
por cierto,
members
en este
are
momento
just
tendrías que
aware of
estar
many more things.
haciendo
Let's
un
say,
examen de este tipo de
I mean, you
naturaleza.
should be
Entonces
just
son
really taking this type of, let's
sistemas
say,
de seguridad
screening or
social
whatever, so, or
proactivos que
test. So
permite
these
la
are social
inteligencia
security
artificial
systems
facilitar
where
a
the social security system is
hacer que las,
proactive, and where AI
los
allows us
sistemas,
to
las
just
personas
find
tengan una mejor
the
vida
different
también.
systems as
La
well.
gestión y prevención de riesgo, ya hablaba algunos de los casos, por ejemplo, en los casos de Alemania,
So
los
we have some
dashboards que
cases in
justamente
Germany as
mencionaba.
well.
Y el
And
último, el
like we
caso
were
del estado
mentioning
de
all of this,
derecha,
well, in
habla
the case that we
de
have
la
to
igualdad y
your
imparcialidad,
right-hand side,
que
you're going to
son casos
see
un poco más
universality,
nuevos
equality.
y
These
más
are some,
novedosos,
let's say,
donde hay
more recent, newer
soluciones para
cases where
ayuda a
we find
identificar
solutions
si hay algún
that can
sesgo
help us
tanto en la
pinpoint if
información de
there's some
estos
sort of
algoritmos, en
bias in
donde
terms of information,
identificación de las
algorithms, where we
soluciones que
can just
estamos
really
dando a
find the
través de
different
los motores de
solutions that we're
inteligencia
going to
artificial
give
tienen
through, let's
o
say,
no este tipo
AI
de
motors, and
comportamiento.
where we're going to see this type
Hay
of
muchos
behavior as well.
requisitos
So we do have
institucionales
a lot
y
of, let's say,
normativos en relación a
institutional,
seguridad social. Hay que abordarlos de manera
challenges
proactiva.
as well. This is going to be
Los
much
retos
more
de privacidad de información,
proactive. We
biases,
have
que ya
this
hablamos
data
bastante,
privacy challenges,
discriminación,
biases, like we
los retos
mentioned,
de
discrimination,
explicabilidad, ¿no?
and a
Hemos
lot of, let's
logrado
say,
conocer
explicability challenges.
más o menos
We need to make sure that some
tienen alguna,
algorithms
alguna,
somehow have some
alguna
sort of sense or
sensación de que tienen es un propósito
feeling
y que
that
se
you have
más o
a
menos explican
purpose,
por
and
ciertas
so that you can
razones. No
really
quiero
help
liberar
us,
un sistema si no
and we
sabemos
cannot just get
cómo es
released
que funciona
let's
y el
say
tema
or
de
forget about a system where whenever we're talking
algo
about a
que
kind
quiero
of
subrayar
accountability.
importantísimo, el tema de
So
supervisión, todos los sistemas de
whenever we
seguridad
talk about
de
supervision,
inteligencia
all of
artificial
the
requieren sistemas
AI
de
security systems
cumplimiento y de
require
checado que
compliance
estén
systems
de
just to
acuerdo a
make
los
sure
objetivos, a los
that they are
principios
just
éticos, a
compliant
los
with the
principios de
different
gobernanza
ethical
que
principles,
ayudan a la seguridad
governance
social,
principles
instituciones
that
de
are
seguridad
going to
social
just
lograr esos
help
objetivos.
these
Y
social security
ya
institutions
hablamos
achieve
un
their
poco
own
de las
goals.
distintas
So we
estrategias
have already talked about the different strategies
que requieren las instituciones de seguridad social tener
required by social
proporcionar
security
un
institutions
nivel
so that they can have
de
some sort of
especialización
degree
quizá
of
no en el todo, no en el
specialization,
externo
maybe
in-house,
we cannot have an in-house expert, right, in all institutions. However, we do need to have some sort of knowledge or a way for us to be able to understand what is data science, what is automated or machine learning, to understand these biases, software development. Some institutions have even collaborated with other institutions, whether public or even educational institutions, and specifically for change management to mitigate any sort of, let's say, fears that I mean, where people may be feeling that they're going to be replaced. I mean, that's not the main purpose, like we mentioned at first. It's not a matter of efficiency, it's a matter of generating added value to the different institutions. So lastly, whenever we're talking about, let's say, normative or regulatory aspects, whenever we start just addressing AI acts or laws or data protection that are in place in different countries, all of that, of course. And now I also wanted to just somehow make a quick add. We're going to have a technical seminar, and it is going to be taking place in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and we're going to be focusing more specifically on these topics, let's say with practice, with workshops, not just keynote speeches. We're going to have, of course, just lectures, but these workshops, like we said, and we're going to have Data Pref. It is the host of this seminar, and here are some references that we've been using both in the report. It is one of the key publications that we have in this regard, but we are also getting a series of, well, webinars and analysis, obviously, from the past conferences in 2022 in Tallinn, Estonia, like we mentioned, in 2024 in Bali, Indonesia. And lastly, we are also developing a new section on AI as part of our newsletter on ITCs of AISS. We expect to finish it by 2025. Right now, we are at a stage where we're reviewing all of these guidelines. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Hopefully, I managed to stick to the time. I hope that you managed to also understand my presentation, and I'll be here just available in case you have any comments or questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ernesto. And I think that your presentation is really guiding us to start just discussing not the current uses, but also the future uses of AI. Like you mentioned, just going from chatbot to another use given by the different institutions, because this has helped us streamline some processes sometimes in these institutions. Like you're mentioning, it is something that is going to be used supplementarily, not really to replace people. At least in the region, we're facing a lack of human resources for us to be able to really provide assistance and service to our beneficiaries and our affiliates. So now with the systems, we could find, let's say, a way to provide better service. So let's pass the floor to Henry Flores, Julka. So I would like to ask the team to help us just open their mic. Or can you hear us? I think that your microphone has been activated now.
Henry,
Henry,
igual que los panelistas, puedes hacer el uso del
you
micrófono.
can just talk. I think your microphone has been activated already. If you can hear us, please go ahead and start just asking your question. We cannot hear you, sir. Can you please repeat?
Es que no pueden hablar, pero ya se le habilitó, entonces tendrías que
Okay,
activar el micrófono.
so your microphone has been enabled. Can you hear us there?
I can hear you.
Are you muted?
I was muted, I guess. I didn't understand what was happening. Yeah. All right.
Okay. No, entonces vamos con la presentación del doctor.
So let's move on to the doctor's presentation, and then we can go back to Henry.
Me
So now let's do a brief presentation of Dr. Saber. He is a professor of the Department of Computing Sciences and Engineering of the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh. He's going to be talking about AI in assistance for decision making in social security by managing to balance efficiency, equality, and responsibility. He is a professor in the science department and engineering in the University of Dhaka, specializing in AI and public policies. His research approaches ethical challenges on AI, specifically in developing countries, and he always advocates for the responsible use and user-centered systems. He has over 19 years of experience. Dr. Haber has been working in different countries such as Argentina, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, China, Myanmar, Portugal, Sweden, and the US. He co-founded the Laboratory on Data and Design, DNDLAV.org, in the Dhaka University, focusing on cross-disciplinary projects that are helping us approach infrastructure issues by raising energetic and education awareness. Dr. Saber has a PhD by the Carnegie Mellon University on engineering and public policy. He has also taken positions as visiting professor in the University of Tokyo and the Rentaku University, where he has given context for AI to make sure that its contributions are included in publications. And the work of Dr. Saber makes sure that AI solutions address unique challenges of developing regions by just using technology to meet the local needs. So without further delays, Doctor, I'll pass the floor to you.
Okay. Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everybody.
Estoy encantada de estar aquí.
I am delighted to be joining you
Mi
today.
español no es el
My
mayor.
Spanish is not the best,
Continuaré
so I
mi,
will continue
talk en inglés.
my presentation in English.
So, all right. I'm really delighted to be here, and I'll try to make it with 15 minutes so that we can continue with other talks and everything. So, I will be talking about how we balance between efficiency, fairness, and accountability when we are talking about, putting AI in the context of social security. So what Ernesto actually discussed just a few minutes ago, he basically talked about how AI has actually changed the way social security systems and mechanisms have leveraged good to the people around the world. Now, one of the things that before even we start with this talk, I would like to recognize today is that just a few days back, not even like 2 or 3 days back, actually, AI got 2 Nobel Prizes. So one in physics, the other one in chemistry, and so it actually shows like how the world is actually looking at AI now. Both the prizes that we actually have seen are related to neural network, which is kind of a invention, artificial intelligence invention that was done in 1960s, but only took prominence in late 90s and became something game changer in late 2020. And now we actually, in 4 years, we actually have 2 Nobel Prizes in this. So it means that, it is actually changing. People are recognizing the benefits and its potential to change the world. So when we talk about this thing, I would take a little bit of an academic view on this part, so that we could actually, in a way, put ourselves in a position that we really need to understand, like, what is AI? What are we talking about when we talk about AI? It's basically a computer algorithm that learns how to fit. So it tries to fit, yes or no. So for instance, like, if the temperature is warm, should I go for a swim or not? So this type of a question, you can ask a system, a computer system, and computer system should be able to tell you that. So some kind of like a decision support system. It might get some information like these blue dots, and then you might want to learn some average idea of like what those blue dots actually mean. And AI system will make this red line so that they could actually give you an explanation of what those blue lines mean. It can also do this other thing, like where you actually classify two type of things, like yes or no, good or bad, or something like that. So these are what we call AI systems are. Now, when we talk about AI systems and when we talk about like, okay, I mean, we understand these algorithms and these programmings can actually solve these problems, but how are this they changing the whole system of decision making? Now, what it does is what we actually see here. Many economists are now saying that AI is making prediction cheaper. So that's the value of AI. Now, because before we had AI to forecast, we had to amass a lot of data. We had to provide a lot of information to the people who could actually do some mathematical modeling, etc., and then can give you some forecasting on issues of social security, issues of global warming, even whatever. I mean, whatever the problems there were there. Now, so prediction now with AI systems has become very cheaper because you don't really need to actually employ so many people and so many technologies, etc. Whereas like you could actually use this AI model that could actually give you some kind of a near usable forecasting or near usable classification or clustering or anything that you need prediction for to be. So it means that when you have cheaper prediction tool, anything that is cheaper, you would like to use it more. And it means that when you use it more, it will impact our social systems more. So from that view, if we look at how AI is helping solving many problems, we could see that many type of issues like crisis response, economic empowerment, educational challenges, and etc., are actually being solved by different type of AI tools nowadays. So just to give you an example of like the work that we do, so this is a picture of a complex network of ports of river ports in Bangladesh, and we could actually map it with AI, and we could actually see like from where to where, like what type of vehicles actually move, what type of vehicles actually move people from place A to place B, etc. And this, like, can solve a lot of problems, from network management to putting a price on, like, how much you should take a cost from going from A to B. Similar type of work can be done in terms of, like, classifying the cities. So for instance, this is a city. You can see that this part of the city is not really amazing place to stay in because it's congested, and it has a lot of, like, it doesn't have great I would say, like, housing system here. However, if you look at this part or this part, you could see, like, they are like better. So we could actually, just looking at this, we could actually say that, okay, the people who have more money would probably want to stay in this part of the world rather than in this part of the world. But this is easier for a human being to actually figure out. What about a computing system? So with AI, we could actually have this type of model where we could actually classify how people live in different part of the city and put, and classify it further so that we could actually have colors that actually can tell us which part of the city are highly formal, which part of the city are moderately formal or totally uninhabited or whatever. And we could scale it to one city. Like, for instance, here we can see from Cairo, but we could actually scale it for cities like in Mumbai, Jakarta, Lima, Nairobi, Guangzhou, Dhaka. I mean, any city that you would actually want to. So it means that you can scale it so fast and so high, and you really do not need a lot of money in this case at all. So that's what actually when I was saying, like, making it cheaper, this is what one of the examples. Now then we have another example of of conversational agent. This is another work that we were doing, and this is a language agnostic conversational agent. You can actually talk in different type of languages and with the people who would like to converse with the service provider. Now, I mean, this looks like Chat GPT, but it is kind of like another venture of Chat GPT, because it is more biased towards the people of the area. So, for instance, the Chat GPT we are now using it is designed on the frame of a frame of US or any or UK or any other rich countries around the world. It is not actually designed for poor countries of the global south. Now we have the chance to actually build that as well. And this is one of the folk, the example of that. Now, when we talk about this type of technologies, we need to actually understand how they work. Now, there's a difference between traditional programming, traditional way of computing, and machine learning, which we call AI. Now, in type of traditional programming, what we have is we have as input data and a program. So we put a data, we also put codes, like specific codes to solve a problem, and we get an output, like the code and data in together gives us an output. Whereas in machine learning or AI, we do not have a specific code. What it does is that it takes data and it takes the feedback from the data, and with those two, they build the code or a program or a pattern, just the way we do. So human beings, they learn by watching people, watching others, watching other things. And while they watch and watch, they put a system in their brain, meaning that they put the code in their brain, and through that, they basically, react to certain situations. For instance, when we look at people fighting, we assess that these people are fighting, and based on that code that we design in our brain tells us like what we should be doing. The code might tell us that you should call a police, or code might tell us that you should go and talk to them and resolve the problem. So that's how AI system also mimic human decision making system as well. Now, AI as in now in today's world is not really a great one. It is really a very fundamentally tiny little system, and we really have to remember that it doesn't even have an intelligence of a rat or a cat or a mouse. It doesn't. It is not that that amazing AI system that we actually talk about that is going to take all our work, all humanity, etc. It's not there at all, and we don't have the mathematics to do that. So if somebody tells us that AI is going to kill us all, probably that will happen maybe, but in 200 years, but not now. But whatever AI that we actually have, they are branched into like 4 or 5 of types. So some of the AIs that we use, meaning some of the AI algorithms that we use, are good for natural language processing, like language text translation, etc., like the Chat GPT stuff. There are AIs that are good for vision, that the thing that actually showed you in math type of project that actually we did. Then there are AIs which are good for robotics. Then, of course, machine learning, which is a mechanism to learn from others. And data science, where we actually try to use this type of machine learning tool to come to decision-making systems. Now, when we have like different type of output like AI systems, we also have different type of algorithms in machine learning, and these are like some of them we call supervised, some unsupervised, some reinforcement learning, etc. So I don't want to boggle down you on these type of things. It's quite boring. It's for the researchers, that's only. However, just to remember, like that there are like multiple types of AI and multiple types of algorithms in AI which are being used right nowadays. And for each of those, we need different type of data, and each of these actually give us different type of solutions to problems. Now, the most important thing that Ernesto also mentioned is that in order for these algorithms to properly work, it needs to be trained. More training gives better performance. Now, more training means more data. So just to give an analogy, a little baby, when it looks at her mom or dad at the very beginning, it doesn't understand like what human beings are. They just only understands that that thing that comes towards me is something that provides me food, gives me shelter. And that's why I have to show him or her smile and cry, etc., so that I can have communication. So that's a very tiny bit of data that they have. As the baby progresses, it gets more data, then it recognizes its grandma, grandpa, and friends and family, etc. But then they also recognize who is not part of the family. So it means that, as you get more data, you get better. So similar thing happens in AI. As we say that, AI is also mimicking human ways of thinking. More training data, more a better performance. The problem is when you have more training data and the data is not well curated, as Ernesto mentioned, you might have bias in the system. That is like, you might have a system where you actually have data from one part of the world and not other parts of the world. So when you try to give a solution, you say that it's a general solution to the world. However, it's not. Something that is workable for Mexico might not be workable for any other country. On the other hand, bias is not always bad, as Ernesto also mentioned. Sometimes you might need to bias your data as well, because whatever is good for the general population might not be good for Mexico as well. So it is kind of like a intricate way of shaping the data that actually makes a better AI system. Once we have the data, it actually goes through lots of processes, and as you can see, like multiple processes, and they have like they circle around this process, and once we have that, we can actually get some kind of like a information out of that AI system. So all I wanted to actually talk about until now is that what AI system is and how complicated the system can be, and it is not the all-encompassing general AI system that's going to kill us. It's just a very tiny AI. It doesn't have that much of intelligence. However, for its intelligence, it needs a lot of data. But we also showed that it is being helpful for lots of services. And we can see that, global AI spending actually has skyrocketed since 2024, and it's actually going up. And the forecasting of around $300 billion in 2027. However, with this type of increasing use of AI, we are actually seeing a lot of AI incidents as well, and controversies are rising as well. So you can actually see a steep rise of controversies. But however, if you look at the number, it is 260. It is not 200 million. So I mean, the use of AI, if you look at the context of how many people are using AI and how many things are being used for AI, and if you compare it with like how many incidents we actually seen, it's very, very low. So naysayers and those people who are actually talking about like, oh my God, AI is going to destroy everything, I don't think that they're actually giving the real I would say focus on AI. They're trying to actually scare us from mostly nothing. Of course, there's something, but I'm not saying like it shouldn't be like out of proportion as people are doing a lot of places. Now, the reason for this thing is these type of problems is that we are actually having an uncomfortable leap with AI. At one part, technology is like jumping ahead. The other part, people are not understanding what AI systems are and what they can do. We really don't know why a system like this, an AI system like this, which is a mimic of a neural network, might give you an output that, okay, if you teach them with lots of cats and dogs, it might give you an output that it might be 90% cases cat, might be 10% cases dog. It will never give you a direct answer that it's a cat and it's a dog. The decision is made by a person. So you have to really understand that it is not the machine that is making the decision. It's the person who is using the machine is making the problem decision. So while you make the decision, you might put us in a situation where you actually create a problem. So it's not only the technology, but the people who are using the technology is also something that we have to remember. And we have to remember that AI systems are giving you probabilistic information, not a deterministic information. So that is why we have a problem when we see that, okay, who is accountable for this? Is it the person who designed the AI system? Is the person who designed the algorithm? Is the person who's actually using the algorithm? Or is it the person who's actually being affected by the algorithm? Who should be the liable for the problem that has been caused? So what we want here is to solve this situation, because we want to use AI. So what we want is we want to have a trustworthy AI that we can trust on. So how do we do that? How do we make that is possible? So the problem to make trustworthy AI, the biggest problem is that people actually vastly do not have any idea that they are making the AI tools nowadays are making decisions on behalf of them. We don't know that in many cases, if you go and ask people, we don't know, like, why we are seeing this on social media, why we actually had an email from an automated system, why I only see this and I don't see that, why if I support one political party, I can only see that political party's information all the time. So these things are not known by people unknowingly, that AI systems are being used for these things. And people, if you ask them, they have no idea. And the second problem is that even if they know it, they believe the tools are morally okay, morally designed correctly. They trust these machines rather than the people who are actually using them or who are telling them other stuff. So that's the problem. So first thing, they don't have any idea. Second thing is that they don't really know. They didn't really, even if they know, they trust these systems more. And that's why I'm not talking about general people. I'm talking about you and me and everyone. While we go and swap our Facebook and other social media pages, we are basically, being the second person here, because we are believing in systems and things more than we're trusting other people. So to bring that in, we need to actually think about trust as an amalgamation of fairness and accountability. Both of them has to be there. And if you want to have that, it cannot be only a technological problem. It has to be a socio-technical problem. We have to think about the human side of the technology. And when we think in that way, we want to explain the AI that we actually have. And if you want to explain the AI, we need to actually have interpretability, transparency, fairness, trust, robustness, privacy, etc., so that we can actually say that, okay, whatever AI that I'm using, it explains to me why it's giving me this answer, and I trust in that. It's not easy. Nowadays, we can only do this. We put lots of data, we just get an information that's a cat. But when you want to have explanation, it will have an explanation model here that will actually say that, okay, this is the reason why. Because of these whiskers or these ears, I actually say that this is a cat. It's easy said than done, but it is not that easy at all, because so much data is there and nobody actually knows how to actually make them explainable. Now, on top of that, technological problem, there's another problem. We actually do not have any consensus on trustworthiness. Academia has different way of looking at it. Government have different way of looking at it. Industry have different way of looking at it. And once you have that, if you look at I'm not gonna disturb you with this, but just to give you an understanding, every different organization have their different way of defining fairness, robustness, transparency, accountability, privacy, and safety. They do not have one single definition for this. And if you do not have that, it is impossible to actually put a definition for trustworthiness. And that's why it becomes very difficult to regulate AI. So it is easy to say that you can regulate AI, but it is not that easy at all. Well, one way of making the thing that EU has done is, like, they say that, okay, there are some certain things has high risk, some have unexpected risk, etc., and then based on that you regulate them. Well, it is easy to say, as I said, but how do you put trustworthiness in there? How do you define what risk and what is not? What is minimal risk and what is not minimal risk? Minimal risk for Mexico might not be a minimal risk for Guatemala in other countries. So with that type of a situation, we really need to have more discussion on this and more communication on this. We talked a lot of this in our in this work, and I hope that you will read it and see, like, how it goes in our venture. And I really thank you for giving us a time, giving me a time to talk about AI and how it might shape our decision-making sphere. All right. Thank you so much for this.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Justamente nos presenta un modelo más asequible
So
para
I know
toda la
that you're just really
inteligencia
giving
artificial.
us a more accessible approach,
Tanto con Ernesto como con
specifically for AI use, and I agree with both you and Ernesto, because I know that AI somehow comes along with trust, reliability. So this week we have been talking about the fact that whenever users have a social security institutions, they also want to just pretty much, well, they have to share pretty much all of their data, type of, blood type, address, identification data, and just doing this transition comes hand in hand with trust, right? Like we mentioned, and we need to understand what is the extent of AI. So again, we need to think about how we need to really manually select information and data to make it more visible. And I think that it's quite interesting to hear how you're talking about these tools that have been designed in, well, some economic powers or countries. So in the same way, I just wanted to thank you so much for just giving this presentation. I would like to ask you to please stay in this session because we will later have a Q&A session. Now it's time to introduce our next panel member. I would like to thank her again for being here. So I want to thank the International Research Center. Please, Doctor, I think that you have a question. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I actually have a train to catch in just in 30 minutes. I have to leave. I mean, have to leave like in 10 minutes. I'm really sorry for that.
Okay.
Can I be excused?
Claro. No,
Of course, no problem. No, I know that because we have a different time zone, I know that you're finishing your day, so our apologies. On the contrary, thank you so much, Doctor. I would just like to just thank you on behalf of the CISS. Hopefully, this is just the first of many times that we will just get the chance to collaborate. Thank you, sir. Okay, so... No, thank you, sir. So, again, Dr. Catalina Gonzalez is an associated researcher for the Sustainable Development Center for Latin America and the Caribbean from the University of the Andina region, Colombia. She's talking about digitization of Social Security service, risks and opportunities. She's going to address how digital transformation is redefining management in systems all over the world. So digitization is now giving us an opportunity, unprecedented opportunity, to improve efficiency and accessibility, service quality, and also to address main challenges such as digital gaps, how this affects the most vulnerable populations. So we will just read her resume. She is a researcher from the Sustainable SDG Center for Latin America and the Caribbean of the University of the Andean region, Colombia, where she she graduated in anthropology, psychology. She has a master's degree in anthropology. During her professional career, she completed a training and master's on epidemiology, social epidemiology, specifically a PhD on epidemiology of public health by the same university. She focuses through mixed methods on the complexity of processes related to health and diseases in Colombia and other countries in the region. And she focuses on social determinants, digital health, and Catalina is the head of different cross-disciplinary research teams that are intended to generating and transferring evidence for decision-making, policy making on populational health. She is 20 years experience in research to promote equality in health care and communities in the global south. She is passionate for scientific diplomacy, cross-disciplinary work, intercultural challenges, research projects, colleagues and her teams consistently work on looking for effective ways to co-create evidence and to exchange knowledge. So thank you so much for joining us today, Doctor. And I just want to just greet the sub-regional manager, Mrs. Mariadela. I know that you are somewhere there, so I just wanted to greet you. So please go ahead, Mrs. Catalina. Thank you. On the contrary, thank you for having me here. I'm really pleased for being able to just share with you in today's session. So I will proceed to share my presentation. Hopefully, you can all see my screen properly. Thank you. Okay, great. I just wanted to just begin by thanking you, Brandon. I would like to thank IDS Canada. Thank you so much for just putting us in touch. And this Canadian agency is the one that has funded and all of this, and it has allowed us to have this research ecosystem in the University of Canada for many, many years. And I know that they are also helping us in providing support in this scientific production that we're doing. I wanted to really focus on this timeline that you have in front of you, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more of where I'm coming from. Those of us who are working in the SDG Center, Cox, and I just wanted to talk about a project example that was called COLEF. This is a project COLEF. So how we have been able to do all of this as well in the ministries that we have. And of course, I know that everything that is related to social security and also on, let's say, crisis care, public health in general. And I just wanted to just give you our insights on digital health in general, the opportunities that we are just foreseeing. And by the way, the two presentations before me have been great. They have been just giving us very good examples, and they just have set the tone for this discussion. So again, let me get into my topic. So I will try to aim for those 15 minutes. Let's see if we can manage to do it. All right, so who are we? What is the SDG Center for Latin America and the Caribbean? Why am I mentioning this? Well, because I wanted to start here. Today's discussions, digitization, health, AI at the service of social security are related to the SDG agenda. There are many entry points and discussions that are related to those SDGs where we can just articulate language, many narratives that will allow us and enable us to generate change. I am a researcher. I am passionate for the academic world. It's been years since I have been just producing what we call the exchange currency in research. We have publications. I've been to conferences. And again, this has little impact if we cannot manage to really make this significant change, structurally speaking, just specifically at a decision-making process, because this is what is having an impact on population. So the center where I work is a platform to do all of this. That's what I wanted to tell you more about this. So this is our context. Where are we? This is our background. So I told you, well, that I am really thankful for IDC because during the pandemic, from April and June in 2020, we had this international call where we had the participation of hundreds of researchers, all of them from the global south. And what they wanted us to do was to create protocols, to create evidence that was based on AI, to create data science. I know that the previous presentation defined and outlined what that means and how that could be taken to those who are in the decision-making process 24/7. And I just wanted to just really help us understand what was the critical point when the pandemic started. And that's the how in this case. I know that we're talking about social security, and we know that we need this type of key partnerships. Where is everything being produced? Let's say knowledge being produced, and we know we have translators, we have messengers, They can have this political lobbying activities, let's say for public health politics and also epidemiology policies in general. So I know that it's not just a matter of us producing a lot of information, all of us using AI the same way. So to the extent that we can just manage to really balance these partnerships and we can just enable all of these types of things. So this is an infographic that we used at the time. Hopefully you get the time to read it in more detail, but at the time what we did was that we just gathered a group of people, most of them social scientists, lawyers, social scientists, general engineers, experts in AI, persons working in a center called Sinfonia or Symphony as part of the University of the Andean region, and they are specifically devoted to making the most of these AI tools, like we heard in the first presentation. So the very first thing that we needed to understand was who were the decision makers in the social technical context that we just heard about, and what were the existing mathematical models, what was new in terms of innovation, let's say AI, the amount of data that was generated and had been generated during the pandemic. And all of this could be used for us to be able to generate a given number of tools. In this slide, you may take a look at the size, diversity of this team and its members. And today, that set the basis for a research ecosystem. I have some examples for you. I'm going to show you some graphs. Something that we did was that we worked on understanding data that came from mobility, understanding data that came from satellites, understanding data, adding up data of what we were doing, let's say logistics in terms of vaccination, for us to tell how we were going to be able to really just really do this vaccine administration. And again, I'm mentioning this because social security workers have a whole range of activities and things to do. So another thing that I wanted to highlight are the social media and of course all of this misinformation and specifically related to health. So AI allows us to just use tools to understand these discussions. We as human beings, we would not be able or capable of understanding all of this without using those algorithms, using vast databases. And there are many things that have been discussed already, but how is that misinformation taking place in other languages? That's key, that's really important, and we need that type of capacity as well. So again, I'm just trying to instill certain ideas of the different, let's say, potential things that are behind them. And then we can just start just pinpointing the different opportunities for us to keep on moving forward. So we all use AI. So we know that we use this type of mathematical models. These are tools that are also coming from this AI in Colombia. We needed to see what was going to be the behavior of that virus. So this was the type of graphs that we managed to generate for us to be able to predict. There's this intent here to try to anticipate our actions and to really try to generate data facing some data absence or data that is missing. So all of this is key whenever we're talking about this natural data cycle, this primary data, where we see most of these barriers. Why? Because we may be excluding people, or maybe because there are some biases that are introduced into this measuring. So we started using associations data, how we could just start opening all of this association. Let's say we were talking about hospitals. How could we manage the openness in certain sectors in a given city? How to open or allow certain economic sectors to be open or not? For all of that, we use, let's say, satellite information, transportation information. We use the social media, mobile phone data, and all of that. So this is one of the topics that makes me really proud. In the case of Colombia, and I'm positive that this also happened in other countries in the region, as you may see here at first, the availability of vaccine at the very beginning was not really enough. How was the distribution going to be made? How are we going to distribute this vaccine to all of the population? So we needed to decide, are we going to just give vaccinations full scheme to those who are at risk, or is it going to be better to at least give one dosage to a, let's say, I don't know, a large population? What we noticed is that whenever we expanded that window from the first and the let's say the first shot and then the boost, then we know that all of that allowed us to just really cover more people, more groups, at least age groups. And in Colombia, that allowed to have less hospital admissions. And in the Ministry of Health in Colombia, we made the decision to have this computation capacity. We required this type of data analysis that was behind all of this. And then we also analyzed how this misinformation happens specifically in COVID-19, at least in Spanish, in social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. And we realized that even though there was risks, we also pinpointed discrimination of migrants, at least in Colombia. We noticed that this was this was a type of behavior, and it was very different discussion from the discussions that were being held in English. And it is also very important to note that we created a vaccine board. This allowed us to understand the logistics behind every country, to really guide what departments were just lagging, which ones were just taking the lead. With these vaccines, we could just really determine what were the areas where we could do this all of in a, let's say, more expensive, less expensive way. And this allowed us just generating this data. We had this actor mapping. We identified all of those participants that were involved in data generation and everything that is needed for AI, their analysis, and also in the end, we use them in the decision-making process. All of this network analysis helped us. I know that someone shared this, so I really like just finding all of this matches and sentences. Whenever we hear what is AI, we also have some determining factors of what's happening behind all of this. Who has access? Who are being just registered in this digital health technologies? And there is no question that this allows just really to digitize and specifically strategic aspects that we have and that may be left out at the time. But let's think about the fact, let's say this is a language that we are all trainings or all words that are not included. All of those persons that are not there are going to be left out of that conversation. They're going to be left out of that discussion. And this is a type of biases that I'm concerned about. So this is this cross-disciplinary work opportunity that we have for us to be able to find spaces like those in social security, the social security sector, that are just trying to provide universal service and coverage right to all populations. Specifically, we know that we have diverse needs that we need to meet. So I just wanted to bring this to the table, that digital technologies are mediated, are somehow influenced by our life conditions. It is important to understand this. There are some areas where we're going to have, let's say, better, let's say, internet signal, some others with lower internet signals. So this is not reliant on social security. This is not something that depends on it, but this is going to be somehow impacted on, because we know that we're trying to have this universal service. So if we work on chatbots that will allow us to improve our follow-up, let's say on TB treatments, or to follow up on diabetes patients, or just by using a mobile phone or a smartphone, all of this is going to help us with this access. But again, it depends on the internet signal. So we all know that all of this is also related to a social gradient in every context, in every country. So in addition to that, I just wanted to talk about this insight. Whenever we talk about technologies, whenever we talk about the use of technologies and AI, like the very first presentation already mentioned, AI is not new. It is not something that just emerged over the past 5 years. No, it has been around for decades. However, this discussion has now become more mature, and it has become more transcendental, more important. We have now a larger computing capacity, and it has been developed through all of these innovations. We have the perfect combination as well. So these are some things that we have. So all of this is part of our potential. So all of this has become more and more evident. It was very evident that we know that the digital world could just either unite us or separate us. But with innovation, whether AI or maybe in the past, we started to see how streets started to have public lighting, for instance, or how phones started to just really become more pervasive. All of these technologies are more and more, let's say, standard, or we're getting used to it, right? They're too mainstream. So early adopters are the first ones who really start with this. Why are they doing this? Because they like it. Maybe they are in, let's say, in the urban area, or maybe there's a series of factors that allows them to participate. So it is important to understand how this AI and how this innovation in general is being used in the social security system. What are the variations that we're going to see depending on the context, on the country? We're going to see governance just based on AI data, and that is dependent on data access, open source data, by the way, that they are reliable, that they're transparent. You have these Pandora boxes or these black boxes that do not allow us to understand what's really behind them. So I know that the digital world allows us to be united, to communicate all the time, but it could also divide us because of the examples that I already mentioned. And in a slide, I just wanted to highlight that there are some actions, that there are some possibilities, and there is no question that we see these growth opportunities, specifically for those who are just related to social security. We have the digital education. I rather use the term of digital education more than digital empowerment, because it assumes some base capacities, skills, and we can just really accelerate the use of AI. And please bear in mind that we already understood that there are some barriers or even enablers. It all depends on internet access, on, let's say, the devices. But there's another topic that we're just really considering. Let's say we generate a certain number of chatbots, but we do not know what is the age group of those who are trying to have access to this. So they may feel that this is accessible, that it is relatable. Maybe it's a cultural component, maybe it's a matter of gender. We do have amazing principles that we have managed to systematize through a study that we have been conducting under what we call the Digital Health Consortium. It is the Digital Health and Human Rights Consortium. It is present in Vietnam, Ghana, Kenya, Colombia. We noticed that there were some opportunities in the pandemic for patients with HIV/AIDS to address their medication issues specifically by using digital tools, because it allowed them to get their medication during the pandemic. But they were also accused. They were just subject of digital violence. So we have all types of angles in all of these topics. I'm not going to talk about this in detail. I just want you to understand what's part of this theory. This is what the academia has been saying. So this is the model that we have, and this is related to the determining factors. So again, this is key for the discussion that we have, specifically for those who are part of Social Security. This is an adaptation made by Dasso and co-authors. So Dasso is doing this. This is a rainbow model. This is specifically on social determining on health, on how a person with certain individual factors, how this affects and has an impact on their health access, decision-making processes. It has social and structural characteristics that are conditioning this. So what this model did was to realize how digital was just going through all of these individual community factors, what is social, and then pinpointed some factors to see how today it is unthinkable to really understand this phenomenon of health and access to health and use of health systems without considering how the evolution of the digital world is now cascading and influencing and mold and shaping all of this. I only have 3 minutes to go, so I just want to just wrap up with just this innovative topic. All the social security spaces can also become spaces that allow strengthening, without a question, our human rights. And I'm talking specifically about the right to health. This is related to AI, to data science, because we are based on the premise that this type of technology will allow us to reach populations that were not reached in the past. So we're going to consider populations that were not being considered in the past. This, in addition to the fact that we're not overlooking these digital technologies, we really need to enforce our rights to freedom of speech, our right to security. This could have an impact on the use and services of healthcare services. Again, the right to privacy as well. So whenever we're talking about status, all of the information that we're compiling all the time, whether by being aware of this or not, everything that we're accepting, whenever we're using a browser, or whenever we want to have access to a healthcare service, let's say, whenever we want to go to a library, to a mall, or whenever we are registering, whenever or wherever, we're just really collecting a series of or a set of information. And right now, at least in the European Union, they're having more and more laws in this regard. So in the last presentation, we were talking about, let's say, this pyramid where we were just seeing more and more risks. We were just really seeing this facial recognition technologies that were key in this discussion, specifically related to this type of things. Why? Because one of the main branches of AI is related to all of that visual data analysis, let's say picture analysis, image analysis. So right now it is amazing to see the potential that we see to detect all types of cancers. And of course, there are risks because if we do not understand that, we still need to develop this AI. And this is related to our potential of just really just enforcing these rights, the right to education, because we need to educate people on digitization matters. And again, I wanted to wrap up by mentioning that we are entitled, we have the right to just really benefit from the scientific breakthrough, all of the opportunities that we see, all of the possibilities of using these data models. And again, these presentations are just for you to really understand how we can just really make the services more universal. So social sciences, humanities, they still have a lot to do and to say and to contribute to the whole development that we see, technical knowledge, computing knowledge that we see in AI. So again, this is just these are the closing remarks. I think that my 20 minutes are over. I'm sorry. As a professor, I'm trained to speak for 3 hours. Again, this is a great invitation. It's just that I think that we could be here talking over and over and for a long, long time about all of these topics. But again, I do see opportunities. I do see a capacity to have some interactions in all levels, not only in terms of governance, for us to be able to make sure that there are transformations, that there are revolutions, digital revolutions, right, in a more equitable manner, where we know that health equality, social security equality plays a key role. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor. I really appreciate your presentation and for having really attended this discussion. I think it would be nice to discuss this at least once a week, right? So the social perspective that you're giving to all of these topics is really interesting to see how we're really approaching all of this. And we also, well, I understand that you are a scientific diplomatic person. So me as an international relations guy, I think that it's important to create that bridge between science and decision makers. There is no possibility and just really understanding all of this. So this is the pandemic detection model. This is for us to make decisions as well. We just wanted to let you know that here in the CISS, we have technical commissions on, let's say, what we call follow-up or accompaniment. One is the American Commission on Health and Wellbeing, and this is pandemic lessons learned from the pandemic and what we did wrong, what we did right, so that we could understand this for coming situations. So we have another commission, which is the American Commission on the organization and administrative systems, and this is presided by members of Subregion 4 again. And I think that what it does is that it really, what it intends to do is to just work on this digitization processes, specifically AI governance, and I'm positive that these are going to be really good contributions for the work plans that we have in place. Now, to wrap up this panel, we have two representatives from the University of the Western India and Indies, and I just wanted to thank their director and their school head because they have already executed a collaboration agreement, this institution and the university in Antigua and Barbuda. So I think that is now important that I just proceed to read their resumes, both Telly George and Dr. Elenius. He is a teacher in the school and of computing and sciences and AI of the University of the Five Islands, and he's focusing on AI, on digital game design. He is passionate for the application of science for the social well-being. He has worked on the development of sustainable solutions by using different technologies that are related to ethics in AI. He is a strong supporter of responsible and ethical development of advanced technologies to face the local and regional challenges. And we have Telly George. He is a manager in software engineering from the Antigua and Barbuda Institute. He is also a joint professor of the West Indies University, same campus. He is giving classes in the science, computing, and AI. He has assisted several AI webinars, and not only how it is applied to Social Security, but he's also interested in implementing and deploying different AI solutions in the Social Security system in Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you, thank you. Greetings.
Muchas gracias. Saludos.
I want to thank you for this
Antes que nada, yo quisiera agradecerles la oportunidad que me han brindado
present,
de presentar
empowering Caribbean social security systems with
los
artificial
sistemas de seguridad social del Caribe.
Ildefonso, as well as Mr. Telly George, and we both are from the University of the West Indies Five Island campus. This is an overview of what we are going to talk about. I will go ahead and start the presentation, talk to you about the University of the West Indies, but share who we are. So myself, I'm with the School of Science, Computing and Artificial Intelligence. And Mr. George is a software engineer at Antigua and Barbuda Social Security Board. About the UWI, I going to share briefly that the University of the West Indies have 5 campuses. We are based at one of the campus, the UWI Five Island campus. We have the Cavill campus in Barbados. We have the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago, and the Mona campus in Jamaica. And I think I've arranged them according to the age, the Five Island campus being the youngest, and the Mona campus being the oldest. And then, of course, the global campus, which is predominantly online and has country sites. So I'm going to share a little bit, well, I'll allow Mr. George to share a little bit on Social Security, and then I'll come in at the end. So over to you, Mr. George.
Yes, thank you, Elenius. Okay, so I am Telly George, as Dr. Elenius would have said, and I am an adjunct lecturer at the university in that faculty of the School of Science, Computing, Artificial Intelligence. I am also an adjunct lecturer at the university. And so I just want to give a brief overview of the situation with Caribbean social security systems. So what happened? Most Caribbean social security systems were established shortly after these countries got independence. For example, in this case of Antigua and Barbuda, where we currently reside, back in 1965, there was a situation where they had what they call a poor relief system or a national provident fund. And then back in 1972, with the help of the International Labor Organization, or ILO, we ended up having the official Antigua and Barbuda Social Security board. Now, what is happening with the situation with the boards is that most of us are reaching maturity. So what you happen is that when you start the Social Security system in the beginning, when no one is at a pensionable age, then you have a situation where you're taking in contributions and you're supposed to be stockpiling for a later date. Now we're a mature system where you have a lot of persons who are now reaching the age because of the aging population, and you're unable to now, you have much more people to pay out the benefits than maybe the persons that you are contributing. So you have a situation where so the reserves for Social Security are important. As we say, they're 25% of the GDP for most of these countries in the Caribbean. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, Social Security contributes 32% of the GDP. All right. Coverage rates for the Social Security benefits are now exceeding 70%. So Social Security systems in the Caribbean are highly dependent on tourism, unlike other developed countries. And so anything that affects tourism directly affects us. So what you find, if you have like a lot of natural disasters, anything that affects that industry in general, we suffer those shocks and the different problems. We also have high migration issues. A lot of persons leaving the Caribbean to developed countries to work, and that reducing the amount of contributors. And also we have a situation where there is to track a person who moves from country to country, we have certain reciprocal agreements in place, but to totalize their benefits when it's time for them to get a pension and how many benefits they contributed in each different country, those are difficulties that we have. We also have compliance rate issues with self-employed persons who, as we say, because they work for themselves, some of them have businesses that are not very well structured. They do not come in and register their business, but they work and do not contribute to the scheme. And of course, we also have a limited range of benefits we offer because of our small size. Next slide. All right, so the main programs we offer, Social Security systems in the Caribbean, we offer pension funds, contributory, which a portion from the employee salary, and the employer also puts a portion. Some programs are non-contributory, like in Antigua and Jamaica, we have something we call an old age assistance program, where these are persons who never really contributed to the scheme, but because of their situation, and we can do a means test, and annually, whatever they earn is below a certain level, we provide a benefit for them. We also provide disability pensions, or some systems call it an invalidity pension, for a person who is deemed incapable of working anymore by the doctor. And so we have to pay them a replacement income on a monthly basis. We also have short-term unemployment benefits. So some persons were able to benefit from that in other countries where during the COVID era, they were unable to work, but they were able to get some residual, some kind of income or replacement income during that time they were not working. And then we have healthcare provisions. So for paying for medication, lab tests, and that kind of thing, Social Security systems would provide for that. Next slide. So what kind of challenges Social Security face? We have economic and social challenges. So we have the financial and actuarial difficulties due to a change in our demographics. So as we say, the aging population and the actuary, in the case of Antigua and Barbuda, every 3 years, they have to come in and make actuarial decisions. We have to up rates or remove the retirement age and that sort of things to keep the schemes viable. We have issues of demographics, as we said. So because of the aging population, for example, right now in Antigua, we have a situation where for every pensioner, we should have 10 working persons to support their pension. And the actual ratio right now is 4-to-1. So for every pensioner, there are only 4 working persons. So we see we're already having a problem of sustainability there. In terms of coverage, we have issues due to the self-employed persons. As we said before, some of them are not covered because they see Social Security as a tax and they refuse to be registered and be part of the system. And we have the issue of those non-standard jobs and platform work. So a lot of persons who working online are below the radar. They don't come and register because they they get paid online, and some transnational companies as well. Reductions, we have reductions in income due to natural disasters. We had, for example, we suffer hurricanes and these weather patterns, and when those arise, we have some little destruction and we have a delay in the contributions. We also have reductions. Our key performance indicators for 2023 showed, for example, in 2019, we had collections of 153.719 million. And in 2020, the COVID year, our revenue came down to 137.235 million. And back in 2021, we were up again 163.679 million EC dollars. I'll turn back over to Elenius.
All right, thank you, Mr. George. And now we look at AI in social security systems. And we have seen globally that there has been adoption of AI in fraud detection, decision-making, as well as operational efficiency. So for fraud detection, you see AI systems that can analyze patterns in claim and identify anomaly and that kind of things. And then in terms of decision-making, we have seen decision support systems that are data-intensive, and they help in the overall decision-making within the social security. Then operational efficiency, that is more in automation of routine tasks. And this is really to minimize human error and administrative burdens that exist within the social security. And in terms of the use cases, we have seen AI application in adjudication and decision support system. This was predominantly based in the United States. And then we have the unconditional basic income that was piloted in Finland. And we are seeing all these, the introduction of UBI as a response to job losses due to the rise of artificial intelligence. And then in some cases, we have seen a robot tax to address the financial impact of AI replacing human jobs. And we ask a question, are these relevant for social security within the Caribbean? Are these kind of solution, kind of intervention relevant as we advance to adopt AI and use AI at a much larger scale? And then the key question really is what kind of problems or solutions are relevant to the Caribbean social security systems regarding the adopting use and implementation of responsible artificial intelligence. And as I said earlier, we have more questions than we have answers, and that is the theme of our presentation. So we're going to be asking this kind of question so that we can get involved in the dialogue and see how we can safely and sustainably adopt and use artificial intelligence. So where are we in the Caribbean as it relates to artificial intelligence? We have seen AI or talks about adopting AI, and this primarily has been driven by the need for economic efficiency and aiming to save costs while improving compliance. So I've seen AI in service delivery for mundane tasks, such as information access and retrieval, and there's a potential for artificial intelligence in those areas. And then, of course, we have seen a growing or sort of growth in terms of accidental and intentional use of AI in productivity tools. So the tools that we buy or procure for other purposes, but they end up having an AI service or an AI component attached to those tools. And we have seen the rise of revolutionizing the customer service industry with the introduction of chatbots. And that really has been where most Caribbean countries are looking at in terms of adopting or developing chatbots to increase customer service. And then, of course, transitioning into mundane tasks. But I should mention that there is currently a digital transformation that is happening in the Caribbean. And this could be an area of opportunity where Caribbean countries can capitalize on this digital transformation to include developing AI systems for key areas. So in terms of conclusion and recommendation, and we're coming to the end, What are the key things that we think are relevant or we have seen throughout research and understanding of the Caribbean systems? We see the need for capacity, and we know we do have limitation in terms of population size. So we do need capacity, both technical, financial, and human. We know our budget in monetary terms, they are not as large compared to larger or developed countries. And then, of course, research, and this is really for continuation and evaluation and development. These AI tools or AI solutions that we have to adopt and develop need to be based on the rigor of good science. And planning, we need clear roadmaps. We are resource constrained, therefore we need clear roadmaps, and we need to identify where the value lies. We need to identify quick wins and capitalize on that. So really the value of data. And then we need to invest in enablers. We have a track record and we have a resilient and strong legal framework, but that need improvement for us to safely and equitably use AI in social security and other areas. Then of course, we have to invest in data infrastructure policies, and we have to incentivize areas of priority so that we get the maximum benefit of these solutions. So a question for you, how can the Caribbean allocate the requisite attention, set the priorities and resources to keep up with artificial intelligence advancement while contending with so many urgent challenges? So as I mentioned earlier, we have more questions than we have answers. And really this question is for us to reflect. We know we have the constraints, we know we have limited capacity, but how can we really keep up while we have other developmental challenges that are a priority for Caribbean countries? And that's really the end of our presentation, and we thank you so much. If there are any questions.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor. Muchísimas gracias, Telly, también por esta experiencia un poquito más centralizada hacia los países que tenemos.
Thank you so much.
De la membresía CISS del Caribe
So I know that it is really important to really learn more about countries, member countries. We do have some questions. I know that we have exceeded a little bit of our time. I hope that you still have the time to just answer a couple of questions. So let's try to just address the questions in the order that you presented so that we can just follow some sort of an orderly manner. So Ernesto, can you please talk a little bit more about the challenges when it comes to data privacy and transparency? You were talking about this in your presentation and other colleagues too, but how can you institutionalize and just really address, let's say, just storing protocols, let's say to store it in private, and just social security system transfer specifically to make sure that we have a responsible and ethical use? It's quite a complicated question because obviously every country and region has its own jurisdiction when it comes to, let's say, regulations on data protection. So, like Catalina already mentioned, in Europe, there are more regulations, specifically to talk about other things as well, see, and the really strong regulation when it comes to the uses of AI. And what we have seen as well is the use of a lot of, let's say, anonymous or anonymized information. That's the word, I think, that meaning that whenever we're just removing all of these characteristics, specific characteristics, because it becomes anonymous, we remove, let's say, the private, specific information of people that could allow us to really make use of all of this and to generate some behavioral patterns. We have to just bear in mind that we're talking about information. Let's say whenever we see data quality and the number of information as well as we have, like I mentioned in my presentation, it is all going to help us improve our solution results. Having said that, there is no question that we do not want to have mosaic effects. That's how we call them, where through different data crossing or many more things. We're going to see all of this in visualization topics and systems. This we could somehow extrapolate data on certain individuals or groups. So it's quite a difficult solution. There are different techniques. However, I would say that each and every one of our countries requires a much more sophisticated processing based on what they could or could not do. So we do have tools. There are some countries that are just talking about synthetic information. So, well, we have our benefits, our risks, and well, we know that we're also generating certain biases when it comes to what we are expecting to have. And I think that what we need is a process of ongoing supervision so that we can make sure that all of this is not left behind and to just review all of this, a whole review process specifically for the whole AI solution life cycle, just to make sure that we can effectively really protect individuals or persons' data. And that's the end of my answer. It is really difficult to answer, right? So that's it. Thank you.
No, muchísimas gracias, Ernesto.
Thank you,
Pues sí,
Ernesto.
creo que
And I
hace
do
falta
agree with
un
you.
marco regulatorio.
And
Aquí
I know
en
that it all
la,
depends on
en
the
la
regulatory
conferencia
framework.
hace
So here in the conference, we were talking about,
unos meses, justo teníamos
well, we
un
were
foro
talking
sobre
a couple of
privacidad
months about
y trabajo
privacy
enmarcado en la
and let's
conferencia de la
say
Comisión Americana de
work
Económico Social.
in the
Uno de los
CISS,
panelistas
specifically
justamente de
the
España
legal and social
habló de ese marco
department.
regulatorio
We
social
had a
internacional que pues,
criminal
sin
lawyer
duda es algo
talking
que no podría
about this regulatory framework.
en
She was
nuestra
from
región.
Spain. And now we're
Catalina,
talking about the region and all that. But
toda la semana ha investigado
Catalina,
esta pregunta en diferentes
I know that we have been hearing about
esquemas
this
de los
the whole week.
diálogos
Let's say in
y es
some, let's say,
justamente qué nos ha
discussions that we've
compartido
had.
justamente
So
tanto el doctor
I know that you
que
and
tuvo que desconectarse como
the
tú.
doctor who had to
Es
leave and yourself,
superficial a final
you
de
have talked
cuentas
about the
promueve
use of
políticas
AI that
públicas más
promotes
eficientes que
some
reduce
much more
costos,
efficient
pero
policies
seguimos viendo que la
and
inversión en estos
we
temas
know
pues
that
aún no es
investment
la
in
que
this type of
debería ser.
topic is not the one that
Entonces nos
should
preguntan
be
cuáles serían
around.
las
So we
mejores
are
estrategias
asked,
desde tu
what are
punto
the
de
best
vista
strategies from
para
your standpoint
incentivar a que las
for us to
personas
be
tomadoras
able
de
to just
decisiones
really
se involucren en estas
drive
conversaciones sobre
decision
inteligencia
makers to be
artificial y
involved in
reconozcan
these
su
AI
importancia en la
discussions, for them
planeación de
to
estos temas de
recognize
IA?
their
Muchas
significance in this
gracias
type
por
of
compartirlo.
systems? Is it possible to hear what you have to share? Yes, of course.
Pienso que eso le aplica
I do
fácilmente
believe that that is
a
easily
cualquier
applicable
pregunta que
to
nos
just any question,
preocupe
right?
alrededor de temas de seguridad
That
social,
may
pero
be
también,
related
por
to
ejemplo,
social
de
security,
educación.
but also, let's say,
Quisiera retomar
education.
un poco de lo
So
que nos
I just
compartía en
wanted
la
to talk a little bit more
presentación.
about what I already
Cualquier
shared.
innovación,
Any
en
type
este
of
caso sea en
innovation in this
tecnología,
case, let's
¿cierto?
say in
Como la
terms
que
of
estamos
technology,
entendiendo o en
like the one that
análisis,
we're just discussing right now, analysis,
requiere una inversión
really
que
requires
supera ese sector.
investment that is going to go beyond that
Invertir en
sector.
más
So
tecnología
we
no es
have
lo
to
que
invest in
va a
more
garantizar la
technology. That
difusión
is
de
what
esa
is going to
tecnología.
help us
Hay
just
que resolver
with
las brechas
the
que tenemos, por
dissemination of this
ejemplo, en
technology. We
acceso a la
need to
educación.
really
Hay que
close the
resolver las
gaps
brechas
whenever we talk
digitales de
about access to
acceso
education,
a
the
estar
digital
conectados,
gaps, and
¿cierto? A poder
just
estar
having
realmente
access to really
conectados, pero además
being
poder
connected,
participar.
but more importantly,
Entonces,
just really participating. So
hay un discurso inmenso
we have
ya
this
antiguo que es todo el tema de los
old
determinantes sociales y
narrative
tiene que
where
ver con la
we talk
influencia de los
about
determinantes
social
sociales con la
determinants. So
salud.
what does
Si
social
queremos
determinants and their
poder
influence have to
mejorar
do
la
with health?
salud
So if
o
we do
acceso,
want to
por ejemplo,
improve,
a
let's
seguridad
say,
social
access
o un
to
mejor
health or
uso
access
del
to social
mismo,
security
no es
or a
solo
better
lo que
use
se
of this, it's not
invierta
just a matter
necesariamente lo que
of
se
what we're
acciona
going
alrededor
to
de salud.
invest in
Es
terms
igual de
of
importante
health.
para los
It
tomadores
is
de
just as
decisiones
important
entender
for
qué está
decision makers to
pasando
really
en este
understand
tema
what
de
is going
conectividad,
on
qué está
whenever we
pasando en
talk
temas de
about
infraestructura
connectivity,
de un
whenever we
país,
talk about
cómo está siendo
infrastructure in
su
a country.
participación en una
How is
conversación que es
the
global,
participation taking place, let's
qué
say,
estamos haciendo
all
por
over the globe?
educación, por ejemplo.
What is it that we're
Entonces,
doing, let's say, for
cómo
educational purposes?
influenciar
So
que
how
tengamos
are
un
we going
mayor o
to
mejor
really
uso en temas de
have an
inteligencia
influence
artificial,
on to
no
have
solo
a
enfocados en
or to
inteligencia
make a
artificial,
better
lo
and
que
larger
influye
use of AI?
en las
It's not just a matter of
capacidades
just focusing on AI,
de
it's everything
poder,
that is
¿cierto?
related
Las
to
universidades, y aquí
our
mis colegas, los
capability or ability
West Indies,
of being
fuimos
able to do it in the
ejemplificando
different
unos
universities.
casos
My
incluso
colleagues
muy
from the
interesantes
University
frente
of the West
al
Indies
Caribe,
talked about it
frente
They were just really giving us very interesting examples of what's going on in the Caribbean, and we were talking about the need of just really making a better use of our population, our pyramids. What are the needs that we see? And to do that, we also need research. We need to invest in research. But it's not just making up hundreds and thousands of all of this. We have this human capacity as well. And we know that we still need to really fund that research in the global south. That's also very important. So again, I could talk about this over and over. That's the end of my presentation. These are the types of topics that can really make me more concerned about this. So that's pretty much it. I absolutely agree, Catalina. In my case, I'm really, I really appreciate what you're mentioning. And during these past days, we have been doing this. We have seen some mechanisms related to social security, migration, social environmental cycles as well, AI, and many more things. But we do see some, let's say, the pyramids and changes in demographics as well, Latin America and the Caribbean, in different perspectives. We have some social determinants as well. And like I mentioned before, I think that at least our panel members already mentioned that we're all based on this social determinants, let's say, whenever we talk about health. And whenever we talk about digitization, we have this double narrative where we're talking about how to move forward in digitization without leaving anyone behind. We have this large sphere in the social arena that we still need to yet address. And well, we really thank your insight, the insight that you have put on the table, and also what you're doing in the Global South. Again, the doctor in the presentation just addressed how we can just raise awareness in our own countries, because there's never going to be the ideal time for us to be able to address all of this without really talking about more urgent needs from the public sphere. And precisely the question that we have for our colleagues from the West Indies University and the Social Security were in Antigua and Barbuda, I just want to thank everyone who are here, and we have Terry. And what are the main benefits and challenges whenever it comes to adopting AI in the social security system in the Caribbean, specifically when it comes to economic efficiency, let's say service delivery, customer service? And another question for two more colleagues. We know that the Caribbean in the different regions is the one that has more portability when it comes to rights. We're talking about this interoperability systems for pensions and how you're using AI. Do you have any comments regarding that? Thank you.
Right. Thank you for those questions. I will start with the first one, and then I'll let the second part be answered by my colleagues, Mr. George. So in terms of AI and adoption and some of the challenges, there are some challenges as it relates to data. So there's issues with the data, and that's why it's very important to have some sort of a data infrastructure. We have data sharing issues, and as you know, there's some of the challenges that were mentioned related to migration, for example, within the region, and having those independent systems. There has to be some sort of a collaboration, data sharing framework that exists. There is also a challenge in terms of policies and regulations. The next challenge, again, it has to do with awareness, and for this solution to really have an impact and well accepted, we need a total public buy-in. The members have to have accepted that this is there, and then of course that goes hand in hand with transparency. So there is public awareness, and then there has to be some sort of transparency mechanism for persons to know that these tools are being used, but their individual rights are not being compromised, and their data is protected, those kind of things. So really is improving in terms of addressing some of the gaps that we have in our data sharing and data protection laws. And then, of course, looking at some of the gaps that exist in terms of creating a more transparent systems, and then, of course, having a public awareness mechanism where persons will know what is happening and how their data is being used. I'll let my colleagues answer the second part of the question, Mr. George.
Thank you, Elenius. Yes, I believe the second part of the question has to do with portability of benefits. And so one of the problems that we have within Social Security something we call the CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Community Agreement on Social Security, which says how we share data, how we treat a person. A person is a Caribbean person, regardless to which one of the islands they choose to reside, and their benefits accrued should follow them. And we also have a smaller grouping within CARICOM we call the OECS, which is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which is a grouping of 9 countries. And within them, there's another agreement. So what you have currently happening is CARICOM is the agreement on Social Security deals with just pensions, the long-term benefits. Whereas the OECS agreement is meant to deal with both. So the long-term ones, it means the long-term pension, or short-term benefit, for example, sickness benefit if you get ill, maternity benefit if a lady gets pregnant, that kind of thing. There's agreements for these to happen. Our problem is that there's no exact way to identify a person moving from one country, because in each country you're issued an independent social security number. So if you're working in St. Lucia, you're given a social security number. If you're in Antigua, you're given a social security number. If you're in Guyana, you're given a social security number. And one project that was launched some time ago was to try to find a way where by a computerized means something generates one number that stays with you and can be referenced no matter which country you go on, so that they can tie and say that this Telly George is the exact same one and a Telly George over there is a different person. And so coming up with these mechanisms is one of the challenges. We have had several workshops, conferences to try to decide, but those are what are the modalities that we have not yet solved that could help us properly track a person so that their benefits and whatever rights accompany them wherever they work in the Caribbean.
Muchísimas gracias, muy interesantes.
Thank you so much. That's quite an interesting set of answers. Every time we talk about portability in the Caribbean, we know that the continental Americas has a lot to learn, right? So before we wrap it up, my apologies. I know that we're taking a little bit longer, so we have Marcela from the UNEP. So we would like to ask her to please enable her microphone. Please, Marcela, would you mind turning on your mic and your camera? Thank you.
Te vamos a hacer la solicitud de... ya, justo. Adelante, Marcelo.
So please go ahead, Marcela. Thank you. Good afternoon. In Costa Rica, it's almost noon. So I know that the question has to do with our ethical perspective. Are there any protocols when it comes to control protocols at this time, whenever we need to apply or enforce AI, especially whenever we're working with very specific populations, let's say elders? Catalina, do you have any experience in this regard? Thank you so much.
Marcela.
Catalina, I don't know if you would like to answer this. Yes, Marcela, there is no question that the ethical component, even though it is very important and it has always been important from the very beginning of over the past years, we have noticed that it has become more and more prevalent. There are 2 ways of taking a look at this. We have a research that is just intending to address this topic applied to health matters, where we have protocols that have been adapted today to understand the ethical side of a given age group, like you're mentioning. There was a very interesting development with the pandemic, like having health interventions that are technology mediated. So we have psychology therapy for patients using or over Zoom or teams, and this required just making sure that there were not other types of risk. Let's say we were not recording these sessions. So again, we do have a lot of scientific production regarding how to do this appropriately, how to use this AI under ethical parameters that can help us review what we know. Moreover, we have about 6 or 5 large magazines that are addressing digital health. We're opening specific chapters on ethics. I know that there are some documents. I do not have a name that comes to my mind to share it with you, but we have developed this. And again, it is not difficult to find. Whenever we have health intervention, whenever health intervention is technology mediated, this is a way for us to be able to get to those protocols that are going to help us with this type of adaptations. And then we need to just consider as part of this ethical use or application. Ernesto shared something else in the chat box, I believe. Yes, just to piggyback on what you're saying. I know that there are some guidelines on the European community as well. Has a very thorough degree in terms of ethics. I know that we need to step back, and I may just piggyback on what Mr. Alfonso was mentioning. So AI and all digital transformation entail ethics, right? They have ethical implications, not just AI. The use of AI and technology entails ethics, ethical behavior, right? Since we're using, let's say, all types of, like, I don't know, weapons or cars or whatever, everything could be used for good or for bad. So all technology components need to have an ethical component. So what is the determination that every country, every process needs to have? What is the government structure? We are just really building some guidelines that could be used inside all institutions, guidelines, whether, let's say, internal and in-house guidelines on ethics and the ethical use of AI, but I know that ethics is pretty much pervasive. And now concerning the elders and the elderly in general, and like Catalina mentioned, I believe that AI comes in very handy in this regard because we have shared a UNESCO link. Thank you, Catalina. Thank you so much. So I do believe that there is a question here where AI, let's say, is using multiple languages. AI is and was used to enable sign language to be more inclusive with a population. In particular, now Social Security had natural challenges in terms of capacity, because you mentioned what is our capacity to just reach everyone? We have limited resources. So AI enables and opens that possibility to really reach people that in the past we could not do this. So let's say talking with a person that has a disability, speaking a language, let's say, and autochthonous or indigenous language, like we said in Morocco. This is very interesting. It was very interesting that this was used for 2 absolutely different languages. We know that Arabic is written from right to left. It has nothing to do with our Romanic alphabet, right? So I think that it is somehow of a maximizer, a catalyzer. This is going to be like the half full or half empty glass approach. So we issued an inclusion report where we talked about inclusion, the elderly, and the populations, that instead of just talking about AI, they were talking about digitization. This is very complicated. We addressed this in COVID. We had a lot of complications, but this is something that leads us to understand that we do need more resources to be able to reach them all, but it is a great tool. My apologies. I know that I I just added a lot of content. Okay, thank you so much, Ernesto. Thank you, Marcela, for your question as well in Costa Rica. So we have replicated all messages because panel members can just do all of that. We have already replicated that as well. So, well, both what the doctor and Ernesto were mentioning. So we do not have further questions. So without further comments or questions, then we have reached the end of our panel. Once more, we would like to thank this amazing, diverse panel. We have a lot of people from different locations all over the planet joining us. Thank you so much, Vania Centeno. She helped me manage and plan this panel. And with that, we're wrapping up this third edition of this high-level discussions. As you know, we usually share with panel members from our member countries, and we are now holding this biannual sessions in March and October. So on March the 24th, we will be now getting into the fourth high-level discussion.
Precisamente a solicitud de la subregión norteamericana.
All these topics on social security. And also, we know that, well, we will keep on including some topics at the request of the sub-region countries. So again, we will keep on addressing the new trends in social security. Once more, thank you so much. On behalf of the Secretary General, Álvaro Velarca Hernandez, thank you so much. And until next time, have a great and lovely evening, afternoon, whatever. Thank you, and see you soon.
Gracias, Catalina. Gracias, Terry. Gracias, Eleni. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ernesto, Caterina.